What's going on, guys? Tyler here from Audioholics Anonymous, and today I bring to you another record update video. Now, I have a lot of records I'm very excited to talk about today, so I'm just going to get right into it. Starting with Brothers in Arms by the Dire Straits. Now, this is actually the album that got me into the Dire Straits. I have two other Dire Straits albums on vinyl, so it's kind of weird that it took me this long to get it, but I had Making Movies and the one Sultans of Swing is on. I think that was the debut. And now I'm happy to add this to my collection, because as I said, this is the one that got me into the band. You know, I heard Money for Nothing on the radio, I heard Walk of Life at some point, and I was like, I gotta get that album. So I listened to it on Spotify. I remember, kind of a funny story, I was playing a puzzle game when I listened to this album, and honestly, I think I did better with the puzzles listening to this album than I did otherwise. So to this day, I actually sometimes throw this album on when I play puzzle games, or even when I study. It's got some very dynamic compositions and really good songwriting on it. It's very underrated in my opinion. There's a lot of Dire Straits fans who just hate this record, and I cannot fathom why. So the songs on here: So Far Away, Money for Nothing, Walk of Life, Your Latest Trick, Why Worry, Right Across the River, The Man's Too Strong, One World, Brothers in Arms. Really, really good record. So next, I have an absolute classic metal album. Number of the Beast by Iron Maiden. Now, I should say this is not my favorite Maiden record, not by a stretch. I like Killers more, I like the self-titled debut more, I like Somewhere in Time more. I think that's the name of it. It's the one with Wasted Years on it. I like Fear of the Dark more, Seventh Son of a Seventh Son more. I like, Power Slave, Peace of Mind more. Not to say, that's not to take anything away from this album, okay? It's still a really, really good record. It's got some amazing songs on it. Here's what the back looks like. It's got Invaders, Children of the Damned, The Prisoner, 22 Acacia Avenue. What an amazing song that is. The Number of the Beast, Run to the Hills. Amazing song. Gangland, Hallowed Be Thy Name, one of the most legendary songs in metal history. Great album, and fucking amazing album cover. Look at that. That is just so awesome. Next, we have another new wave of British heavy metal band, equally as influential, and I would argue a better band than Maiden, Judas Priest. Now, again, I actually have two other records. I have their live album, Unleashed in the East, and then I have Screaming for Vengeance, which I consider the brother/sister album to Defenders of the Faith. I think they have a very similar sound, feel, and their songwriting is pretty similar, so I kind of consider them brother and sister albums. This is what the back looks like. But this album, I think, is slightly worse than Screaming for Vengeance. These days, I tend to prefer, like, Sad Wings of Destiny. I really like Screaming for Vengeance, obviously, but even some of the newer stuff I think is better than this, like, Firepower and Redeemer of Souls. But this is still an amazing album. There's one song on here that almost sounds like hair metal, which I'm not a huge fan of, but the rest of the album is killer. You got Free Will Burning, a classic, Jawbreaker, Rock Hard Ride Free, The Sentinel, one of my favorite Priest songs, and probably the first one that I really latched onto as a true masterwork of metal. Love Bites, which I think is the hair metal song. I don't remember. I think it's that one, though. Eat Me Alive. How heavy is that song? Some Heads Are Gonna Roll, Night Comes Down, Heavy Duty, and the title track, Defenders of the Faith. Great album. Very happy to have it. So this next one's kind of weird. I found it in the bin at my local record store, and I just decided that I had to get it. It is a single, The Real Slim Shady by Eminem. Now, you might not know from listening to, these types of videos on my channel, but I'm actually a fan of rap. I like a lot of rap from the gangsta area with, like, Tupac and Biggie. I like a lot of modern rap, too. Not mumble rap. I'm not a fan of that, but I like a lot of lyrical stuff from people like Tech9 and Joyner Lucas. But Eminem's always going to be the god to me, man. I think he's the king of lyricism in rap. I think there's pretty much nobody who can match him. And this is a song from the prime of his career. The Real Slim Shady is a classic. I mean, even people who don't listen to rap know this song. And there's a reason for that. It transcends genre in the same way certain rock and metal songs do, like Bohemian Rhapsody. And I think it's honestly kind of offensive that songs like this are not considered on the same level as songs like Bohemian Rhapsody. To this day, rap is still considered a lesser genre, and I think that really sucks. So yeah, I'm happy to own this, and also it's the only single in my record collection, so this is the first one I have. I will probably get others later down the line, but yeah. So next is a band that I think is, in my opinion, one of the best blues rock bands, and also, in my opinion, better than Zeppelin. So you might be wondering, what could that be? That would be Cactus. Now, I consider Cactus to be the US's answer to Led Zeppelin. And I think overall, they're better musicians than the people in Zeppelin. I mean, don't get me wrong, Zeppelin is a legendary band, but I've always maintained that they are a little bit overrated. I think Cactus is better than them in mostly every way. Here's what the back looks like. So some of the songs, Parchman Farm, that is an absolute classic of blues rock. My Lady of South Detroit, Bro Bill, You Can't Judge a Book by the Cover, Let Me Swim, No Need to Worry, Oleo, Feel So Good. Just a great blues rock record. If you like Zeppelin, if you like that sort of music like Cream and things like that, check this album out. I'm telling you, you will not be disappointed. So next is an album I'm very, very excited to have because I'm a huge fan of this band, and I actually don't have any of their other albums or live albums. And Justice for All by Metallica. Man, I'm happy to have this record. I love this record. Right now, this is my favorite Metallica album, but I'll be honest with you, that changes every other day. You know, some days it's Ride the Lightning, some days it's Master of Puppets. Today it happens to be And Justice for All. I absolutely love this record. I will tell you that I spun it before this video, and the lack of bass is a little bit more noticeable on vinyl for me than it is on streaming platforms or on CD. But it doesn't take away from the heaviness and the bleakness of the sound. If anything, it adds to it because it sounds a little bit more empty. And so that kind of adds to the empty atmosphere and the bleak atmosphere that they're going for with this record. I mean, you can feel it right on the cover of the album. They're trying to communicate how decrepit the world has become. And I think the songwriting is perfectly structured for that. Here's what the back looks like. So the songs on this record, Blackened, classic thrash metal, and Justice for All, the song that I consider the best Metallica song ever made. Eye of the Beholder, fantastic song. I know certain people don't like it. Those certain people are just weird. One, come on, One. That is a classic. One is considered by some to be the single greatest song ever made, and you really cannot argue that much. The Shortest Straw, Harvester of Sorrow, The Frayed Ends of Sanity, a very underrated track, To Live Is to Die, and finally the thrash masterpiece, Dyer's Eve. Dear Mother, Dear Father! Fucking love this album. There's not a single album in Metallica's discography that sounds anything like it. It's uniquely heavy, it's uniquely structured, it's got complex, amazing, thrashy riffs. This is everything you want. And more, if you're a thrash fan. Speaking of thrash, we have another album, which I consider to be one of the best thrash metal records ever made. Maybe even the best, although I would still say The New Order by Testament beats it. Rust in Peace by Megadeath. What a monster of a record this is. The last record I showed you, a little spotty in comparison. Not to say any singular song on And Justice for All is bad, but every song on this is just so much better. Aside from maybe one. One is probably, well, And Justice for All and One are probably the two songs that trump most of this album. But if I were to sit here and compare, I don't know, man. Tornado of Souls is pretty damn good. Pretty damn good. It's pretty damn good. Lucretia, pretty damn good. Holy War's pretty damn good. Hangar 18, the strength of these tracks, man, are just, oh, and the guitar riffs are so good. I could gush about this album for years. Marty Friedman's solos, legendary. Tornado of Souls is arguably the best guitar solo ever put to a record. Ever pressed on a record. You could argue that. And Honestly, I probably have in the past, because it's such a good solo. And this album is killer from front to fucking back. You got Holy Wars, The Punishment Due, a classic thrash song. Hangar 18, classic thrash. Take No Prisoners. The rhythm guitar in that song is fucking insane, man. Say what you will about Dave Mustaine being pissed off and being a rip-off of Metallica and whatever. This man is an insane guitar player. Five Magics, Poison Was the Cure, Lucretia, the single most underrated Megadeth song in my opinion, Tornado of Souls. Oh, it's just amazing song, one of the best metal songs of all time. Dawn Patrol, that fucking dirty ass bass riff, Rust in Peace Polaris. Come on! This album is fucking amazing, and I am so happy to have it in my collection now. Alright. Moving on, we have another one which I've wanted for a long time, In the Court of the Crimson King by King Crimson. What can I say? You know, I've been doing the Getting Into Prog series, and I have gotten successfully into prog. I am now a huge prog head, and these guys are arguably the first prog band. You know, maybe you could say that there were progressive acts before King Crimson, but King Crimson most definitely created the sound that people these days associate with prog rock. Yes, Gentle Giant, Camel, all those like 70s bands, Atomic Rooster, all of those 70s bands, Rush, all those bands were influenced by King motherfucking Crimson. This album started it all. The artwork on this album alone is worth getting it on vinyl. Just look at this schizoid man. And then over here, I think this is the Crimson King. I believe it is. You have that in the inside. This is actually a gatefold, as you can see. And the back is just, I love everything about this case. So, yeah, amazing album as well. It's not just the artwork. You know, the songs on here, 21st Century Schizoid Man, that is a legendary prog rock song, one of the best ever. I Talk to the Wind, Epitaph, one of my personal favorite songs of all time. Moonchild, what an experimental song. And finally, The Court of the Crimson King, which is in my personal opinion the best song on the album. Robert Fripp on guitar is a genius. Other than that, you have Ian McDonald on reeds, woodwind, vibes, keyboards, mellotron, and vocals. Amazing stuff. Greg Lake, who of course would go on to help form Emerson, Lake and Palmer. He is the bass guitarist and the lead vocalist on the album, and he does such an amazing job. Michael Giles on drums, percussion, and also vocals. Amazing, amazing drum work in this album, and percussion in general. Oh, just such an amazing album. Just amazing, okay? This was my favorite album of all time for a very long time. As of now, the only thing that's trumped it is Still Life by Opeth, and really, it's by a hair. This album is masterful, and any person who thinks that they are a appreciator of music, and that they love music, that they are a fan of music, they need to check this out. This is a very dynamic album, and it's a must-listen for music lovers and fans of music. Oh, and I almost forgot to mention, this particular version is the Steven Wilson remix. Now, I know some of you don't like that. I personally prefer the Steven Wilson remix, which is why I got this particular version of the album. I think his remix really brings out the dynamic qualities of this music. And finally, we have maybe the album I'm most excited to have in my collection now, and an album that could very well become the #1 album of the year. There's definitely a few contenders for that spot, but right now, this is probably in the lead. I'm listening to this so much, and each time I listen to it, it just gets better and better and better, and now I have it on vinyl, so I'm going to listen to it even more, and I will tell you it is better on vinyl. I'm just going to reveal it now. Oceans of Slumber by the band Oceans of Slumber. Where do I even start with this album? This album is one of the most unique albums I've ever heard. It blends doom metal, gothic metal, prog, like progressive metal. It blends all of that with soul, with textures of that kind of music. It's one of the most unique albums I've ever heard. I really mean that. That sort of fusion I've never heard before. ever. The atmosphere on this album is palpable. Listening to Opeth, and one of the main things that I like about Opeth is that they're such a diverse band, and despite being so diverse, they have this atmosphere that never goes away in their best albums. And honestly, Oceans of Slumber nails that fucking atmosphere in their own way. They're not just copying Opeth. They're doing it in their own way. And honestly, that aspect of the album is more like classic Opeth than Opeth themselves have sounded for a very long time. I would argue since Blackwater Park. As much as I like Ghost Reveries, it just doesn't have the same atmospheric qualities that Still Life and Blackwater Park do. This album nails that shit. When you listen to this album, you just close your eyes and you let it take you, you really feel like you're floating in an ocean of slumber, and that's what's really amazing about it. There's no other way to describe it than to just say it feels like you're floating and you're asleep and there's just nothing around you, and it's dark and dreary, and it's perfect for that. The vocals are just phenomenal on this album. Like I said, very, very soul influenced. But it's not just all clean singing. There's actually a fair amount of death growls on this album too. It's not overused. It is actually used sparingly, but that makes it more impactful when it comes out, whereas Opeth mostly uses growls, and then the clean singing is more impactful when it comes out. I think it's kind of the reverse on this album. When they break out those growls, really grabs you by the balls. And man, the growls are good on this record. But not only are the growls good, there's a song in this album where the male vocalist, who usually does the growls, I believe, sings clean, and he actually sounds a bit like Mikkel Ackerfeldt from Opeth, in my opinion. The first time I heard it, I was like, wait, is this Mikkel? Is he, like, featuring on this album? And I looked it up, and no, he's not. It's just the guy from the album, or from the band, but it just sounded so reminiscent, and that's what really made my mind see the connection between Opeth and this band. There's clearly influence from that progressive genre, and probably Opeth in particular. And I feel like that blending with the other genres, doom metal, gothic, and soul, makes such a unique sounding album that it's just a masterpiece. This is what the back looks like, by the way, and this is the gatefold. Very beautiful, beautiful artwork. And another thing about the artwork is I feel like it perfectly captures the feeling of this album. That's the thing that I love about covers like In the Court of the Crimson King. It just perfectly, you look at that and you can almost hear what the music sounds like. The same thing can be said with, Rust in Peace. You just look at that and you can hear the music, and Justice for All is similar. You look at it and you can hear the music. But no album that I've listed so far has such an atmosphere about it. And when you look at that album, you don't even have to hear the music. You can already feel that atmosphere. But enough about that. Let's talk about the songs. Soundtrack to My Last Day, which, none of these songs are currently transcribed on Genius, so I don't know for sure what they all mean. All I know is basically what I interpreted them as when I read the lyrics. And to me, this song sounds like, from Death's perspective, coming and seeing a dying man who's not ready to go. And the song goes through him dying, and then at the very end, Death comes to take him, and it's just such a journey, and I just love it. It's so well done. Pray for Fire. What an amazing song. The melodies on that song are so gripping. A Return to Earth Below was the single, and probably the most soulful song on the album. It's really just a melancholic song, and it works on so many levels. The Adorned Fathomless Creation, probably the most heavy song on the album, and it works so well. It opens with something that sounds like a distorted backwards thing, so I'd be interested to play that in reverse and kind of hear what that is. Imperfect Divinity, To the Sea, A Tolling of the Bells. Again, just fantastic music on display here. Great melodies, great lyricism. The Colors of Grace, I Mourn These Yellowed Leaves. This is a very poetic album. The lyrics are very poetic. It's very hard to tell what these songs are about. But what I can say is, despite the constant melancholic dreariness that this album just exudes, I think there is a hopeful quality to the music. It's not all dreary and gloomy. There's a part of this album that is very hopeful. Total Failure Apparatus, September's before that, I forgot to mention, but Total Failure Apparatus, The Red Flower, and finally Wolf Moon, a cover of Typo Negative's song from October Rust. What an amazing album. And by the way, that cover is so good. I think arguably better than the original. This album, just everything about it is amazing, and I'm so happy to have it on vinyl because I think it's very dynamic and it sounds even better on vinyl, in my opinion, than it sounded on streaming, and it already sounded amazing through streaming. So yeah, Oceans of Slumber. I could gush about it for decades, but I'll leave it to listen to it. So let me just go through all the albums that I listed. I think I mixed around the order a little bit, but Oceans of Slumber by Oceans of Slumber. And Justice for All, Metallica. Megadeath, Rust in Peace. In the Court of the Crimson King, King Crimson. Cactus by Cactus. The Real Slim Shady single by Eminem. Defenders of the Faith by Judas Priest. The Number of the Beast by Iron Maiden. And finally, Brothers in Arms by Dire Straits. It's been awesome giving you guys this update. It's been awesome talking about these records. I can't wait to spin all of them. And I hope you guys are having fun watching along. Well, until next time, without further ado, I bid you adieu-do. Bye-bye.